I'm now walking back to the boat because the tide is starting to come in. Boat's over here. The boat sails pretty well, actually. It sails very well. Everything I've ever hoped. Feels very roomy. Got a fair amount of work to do on it to sort the boat out, but it's going to be great. I hope. It on the way. I've spoken to local people and they say if I zoom across the wash I will pick up the ebb tide, and that should bring me up along the coast. Quite a decent tidal flow, so that'll be great. So I'm going to go to Woolpack, Linnock, DZ number 4, and then into the creek at Norton. Should be fairly easy. The bloke there says that he'll meet me at about, he reckons I'll get there about 4 if I leave an hour before high tide here, about 7 from here. So, oh, can you hear that? Tide is just going underneath the boat now, just about to hit the weir ground. This is fantastic the way this boat sits upright, it's brilliant. Listen to that noise. So, quite easy really. It's just a case of choosing the buoys you're going to call at. Just give you waypoints really. I mean, it should mostly be visual, but it's good to know how far away things are. So I'm starting here somewhere, and then I'm going to come across to Woolpack, Linnock. I'm going to go around between Skegness and the wind farm. I'm going to cut as close to the wind farm as I think I can, and then it's up. I'm going to stick as close to the coast as I can, just out of interest, but it goes past Skegness and then turns up here. There's a firing range which I have to skirt, so I have to come out away from the coast here. They're not closed all the time. Usually when the tide's in you can sail on them, and they only use them as a firing range when the tide's out. And then this is the start of the Humber. You can see this is Spurn Head, comes down here. And there's this little creek here where I'm going to put my boat. Tetney High Sands, and there's a seal colony here. So it should be fairly well sheltered, and it's sand, and I can walk ashore and leave my car there. And a chap called David is going to meet me, and then he's going to bring me back to Wells on Friday to pick up the car, which would be absolutely wonderful. So in this case, piece of cake. So you choose the buoys you're after, and then in this book here, in the UK, it's Reed's Almanac. This is the old one. Somebody bought me a new one, which is very nice of them. You look down here and you can just see the lists of the buoys. So Woolpack is the wash. There's Woolpack, and it gives you the coordinates of the buoy, Woolpack, and you just type them into the GPS. So I've got most of them in now, just one more to do. So I'm only going to have 4 waypoints tomorrow. Should be more than enough. Okay, it's 6:15 in the morning, and this says that as the crow flies it's 45 miles to Tet, which is where I'm going. I've even forgotten what the place is called. Tetbury. Anyway, across the wash here and up to there. So, I've got about an hour of the engine running to start off with, which is going to be awful. So I'm kind of reluctant to fire up, but I've got to do it.
long passage in the new boat for the first time. I've got a reef in. It's not that windy, but it's supposed to pick up later today, so I'd rather start with the reef. We're doing okay. We're plugging the tide, and it says it's doing 2.3 knots. And that's plugging the tide. So, and to say, I'm really, really pleased with this small reef. That's a great shape. That back keeps on dropping out. I've lost 4 from there so far, but actually I'm not sure that it matters that much. Tiller pilot is steering. To do with a little bit of modification here. This is the Mark 1 tiller pilot, but I'm going to replace it with a nice piece of carefully styled plywood. I always rig a rope down the side of the boat. It's my safety feature. Here we are, and it says that Woolpack is over there, so we're not even fetching Woolpack at the moment. Got a long schlep along the coast here. This says that it's going to take 7 hours and 36 minutes to get to Woolpack. Well, I certainly hope not. Once the tide turns, it'll really cut down. Now we're down to 1.3 knots now against the tide. Pathetic. Don't know whether to shake something out. I'm just going to chill for a bit while the tide turns. 1 knot is okay, I can live with that. 2 knots, that's alright. Slug wouldn't be doing anything. 11.9 miles, nautical miles, Woolpack. 8 hours. Dire. Things will improve. Shaken out another reef, and we're now doing 3.5 knots against the tide. So once the tide turns, we'll be doing over 5. Slightly off the course, but it doesn't matter. Don't like this bit of the main here. Need some of those ring things to pull it into the mast, just to make the shape better. It's okay, just it won't beat worthy. The tiller pilot was kind of making a beeping noise, saying that it wasn't doing a very good job of keeping a good course. So I just set it to that position and thought I would do a bit of sail trimming, and it's doing between 4.9 and 5 knots, and the boat seems to be holding the course amazingly well relative to the wind. It's doing a really, really good job. The wind is it's just off a beat. It's a sort of fetch in a way. So none of the sails are really hiked in hard, and I don't think this boat likes having its sails hiked in hard. But it's doing really, really well. It's holding its course. It's held its course this way for about an hour now. Sun's starting to come out now, so I'm feeling more positive. It says here that it's going to take me 6 hours to get, so the tide must be running underneath me a bit as well. Okay. Going very nicely though, very nicely. .330 is the course I want, so it's just a little bit off, but that's alright, a little bit slack. There's a little bit of backwinding in the main, but I don't mind that. As long as the boat's sailing straight and sailing at 5 knots, who's going to complain about that? This boat's been sailing itself like this for about 3.5 hours. I haven't had to touch a thing. It's a pretty lumpy sea, you can see, but it's still just tracking. I've got the sails set up so that the main is backwinding a little bit, so that does help to trim the boat. But basically, she is tracking beautifully. I've got a bit of navigation coming up now because there's a wind farm ahead. It says floating hotel. It's where the wind farm workers live. This is a slightly beamier reach. I've turned off the tiller pilot, I've disconnected it, and just using the KeepTurningLeft Pungy tiller tamer. Works a treat. That's the point of sail we're on. You can see that there is some backwinding in the main, but that is the flexibility in the system. If you don't backwind the main, then the boat's going to keep on rounding up. So the jib and the main are just keeping the boat balanced. Everything's really nice and slack, lovely. And you know, the water is far from smooth, and yet the boat is just tracking the wind. There's a bit of a storm coming through, so I've got to put a coat on. Gonna get it. This should be DZ number 4. And I'm pleased to see that the tide is still... Yes, DZ number 4. The tide is still going underneath me, which is good. So this is the mouth of the Humber. There's Grimsby up there. Getting on with Grimsby. It's a sand fort. No idea what sand fort means, but that's where I'm heading. And the entrance to Tetney is just after the sand fort. See anything? No. The tide has now turned against us, so I mean, we're still doing 5.5 knots over the ground, but you can feel that the tide is going the wrong way now, I think. And then it should pick up again underneath me once I get into the Humber. But I'm not really going into the Humber, I'm cutting off across the edge into Tetney, which is a little creek down the back here. One of the KTL sailors has offered me a mooring there for a couple of days, a chap called David. So, and he's here, he's going to meet me, so that'd be great. He's going to show me the way, and he's going to come out with his dinghy when he sees the red sails here. The boat's going really, really well. I couldn't be happier with it. I really couldn't be happier. As long as nothing breaks, I think it can handle quite a lot of rough stuff. As long as nothing breaks and the engine starts, then I think the boat is going to be fantastic. Looks to me as though it's about to just bucket down. Just as I'm arriving at Tetney. Looks like a very nice place, actually. It's hard to see through the camera. Let me just summarise the journey for you.
49.4 miles, nautical miles, maximum speed 9.2, moving average 4.7. Not bad actually, not bad at all. Average speed 4.7, good. Here it is, it's come really, really nasty. Bloody Nora. It's come really...
They were watching me from the clubhouse. I just cut it too fine, and so I got a real pasting just out in the river here, and it just shows that, you know, if there had been a storm like that when I was at sea, it would have been really horrible. Fortunately, I was right tucked in under the lee. There's a little creek comes in here somewhere, and I came in along the creek there. You can just see the water there. So that's where I came in. This is Tetney High Sands. It's a little creek. What's this called? Just says Mark Channel. It's a little creek that goes into Tetney Haven. So this is Little Haven, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 boats. So it's pretty small beer. And it's right, as you can see, at the mouth of the Humber. You can tuck away here. The only place that it's open to, they tell me, is if there's a northerly. And I guess a northerly with a bit of easterly in, then this place gets really, really lumpy. But apart from that, and at low tide, of course, it's never lumpy, but I can imagine you could be on the boat here and you'd be sitting here and you could hear the North Sea pounding on Tetbury High Sand and thinking, that's going to come and get me when the tide comes in. So you would want a good anchor. Hence, these boats are well moored, because most of the time it's sheltered, but every now and again they get a real pasting. So you can see that I am anchored. I've got an anchor here and another one over there. It's windy, really windy. Look at this stuff coming. This is real time. So I'm in Tetney Harbour, which is just a little creek here, and for the first time in my life, I think that probably mine is the most expensive boat here. Wow, this water comes in so fast. First, my neighbours have just turned to the thread, turned to the flow. They're all pointing to the flow. I'm on quite a shallow bit here, actually. There is Spurn Head. The Humber is amazing. It is a big, bold, beautiful estuary. Massive. It's the sailing club there.
Bit of a sunset there. Here's the fort that guards the mouth to the Humber. And there's my mooring. So this is Tetney Harbour behind me. Tetney Creek, I don't know what it is. Tetney Anchorage. Very nice people. My plan is to leave here tomorrow, mess about at low tide around the harbour mouth, and then when the tide turns, ride it all the way up to Brough, and I'm going to leave the boat at Brough because Brough seems like a better place. It's got electricity, you can walk to the boat without getting filthy. It's a pontoon, I can park there. So this is a lovely place. This is going to be a great place to visit. Look, birds have started. I always say that the Lincolnshire skies are good. And because it's flat, it is kind of, and it's quite away from the sea, it is sort of prairie skies in a way. Has that drama that the prairies have. But of course this has salt marsh and water. So my plan is to leave here tomorrow morning on the tide and sail up and down low tide, see what the entrance to the Humber looks like at low tides, and then as the tide comes in, I think it turns about 2 o'clock, I'll drift up the Humber with the tide to Brough, and I think it's about 20 miles. As you know, I like to experiment with food, so tonight we have meatballs with microwave rice. That's a bit of an experiment, never tried this before. Well, the meatballs will be fine. We'll see how the rice goes. I'll see if I give it long enough. The stove is working fine. I can live with it. It's not wonderful. It does smell a bit. It smells worse than a Trangia for some reason. I have no idea why that should be. I have put water in the meths. Don't know what's going on. Anyway, that's supper. Not a bad place. The mooring here is that is pretty awful. Yeah, okay. It's pretty much turned to solid starch. Still, we'll see if some meatballs in it will help in any way. Oh, that improves the rice no end.